Story 1. I've worked at Thrill Valley Amusement Park for 3 summers now. The pay isn't great, but the free admission on days off makes up for it, and I genuinely enjoy watching people have fun. I operate the Screamer, our park's newest and most intense roller coaster. It features a 200-foot drop, 3 consecutive loops, and reaches speeds of up to 75 miles per hour. There are warning signs everywhere about securing loose items, height requirements, and medical restrictions. On busy days, the wait for the Screamer can stretch to 2 hours. Last Saturday was particularly packed. The weather was perfect, and we had a special discount promotion running. My job was to check safety harnesses, remind riders about loose items, and make sure everything ran smoothly. I've seen it all: people trying to bring drinks, phones flying out of pockets, and even someone who tried to bring their small dog on the ride. Yes, really. But nothing prepared me for what happened with the woman I now call Wig Karen. It was mid-afternoon when she approached the front of the line with her teenage daughter. The daughter looked excited. The mother looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I pegged her to be in her mid-40s, wearing designer sunglasses, white capri pants, and a blouse that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. Her hair was styled in a perfect honey blonde bob that didn't move an inch as she talked my first clue, though I didn't realize it at the time. Welcome to the Screamer. Please secure all loose items in the bins provided. Phones, keys, hats, glasses should all be stored before boarding. I gave my standard spiel, which most people hardly listen to anymore since it's also playing on a recorded loop. Karen, adjusting her sunglasses, is this ride really worth the wait? We've been standing in line for over an hour. It's our most popular attraction. Most riders think it's worth it. The daughter was practically bouncing with excitement. Daughter, come on, Mom. You promised we could do all the big rides today. Karen, sighing dramatically, fine. Where do I put my purse? I pointed to the storage bins. Right over there. You'll get it back after the ride. She reluctantly placed her designer bag in the bin, but kept her sunglasses on. I was about to remind her about them when another rider needed assistance with their harness. By the time I got back, Karen and her daughter were already seated, and the ride attendant had checked their harnesses. The ride began its slow climb up the main hill. Everything seemed normal until I heard the first screams from the initial drop, mixed with one particularly distinct shriek that sounded less like excitement and more like genuine horror. When the ride completed its circuit and returned to the station, most riders were laughing, their hair windblown, faces flushed with adrenaline. But not Karen. Her face was a mask of shock, and her head was different. Where the perfect blonde bob had been, there was now thin, patchy natural hair. The wig was gone. Karen, screaming as the safety bars lifted, "Stop. Everyone stop. My hair. My expensive hair is gone." Her daughter looked mortified, shrinking in her seat as her mother unbuckled and stood up unsteadily. Karen, pointing at me, this is your fault. You never warned me about wigs. Ma'am, we have multiple signs about securing loose items, and the recorded announcement mentions. Karen, cutting me off a wig is not a loose item. It was attached to my head. By now, the other riders were exiting, some trying not to stare, others openly gawking. The daughter was attempting to disappear into her seat. Daughter, Mom, please. It's fine. We can get another one. Karen, it is not fine. That was a custom-made human hair wig that cost $3,000. I want this ride stopped immediately so someone can retrieve it. I tried to explain as gently as possible. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but we can't stop operations to look for your wig. It could be anywhere along the track, and it's dangerous for staff to... Karen, voice rising to a pitch that could shatter glass, I'm not leaving until I get my wig back, or a full refund for it, and compensation for emotional distress. The line of waiting riders was getting restless. My colleague had already sent the next train out, but we couldn't load the next batch with Karen still standing in the unloading area, creating a scene. I radioed my supervisor, who arrived quickly, wearing the forced smile that meant she was already at her limit with difficult guests. Supervisor, what seems to be the problem? Karen launched into her story, adding new details with each telling. Now, apparently, I had specifically told her it was fine to wear the wig. The supervisor listened patiently, then offered a compromise. Supervisor, I understand this is upsetting. While we can't stop the ride, I can send someone to look for your wig after the park closes. If we find it, we'll contact you. I can also offer you complimentary fast passes for your next visit. Karen, crossing her arms, that's not good enough. I'm not leaving this spot until I get a full refund for my wig and today's tickets. The supervisor explained that park policy didn't cover personal items lost on rides, especially when there were clear warnings. By now, it had been about 15 minutes since the incident began. The line had grown even longer, with people craning their necks to see what was causing the delay. Some had given up and left for other attractions. Karen, now addressing the crowd, is everyone seeing how they're treating a paying customer? This is outrageous. I'm going to call the local news. I'm going to blast this place on social media. Her daughter had moved away, pretending not to know her mother. I genuinely felt sorry for the girl. At the 20-minute mark, my supervisor radioed for security. When they arrived, Karen somehow escalated further. Karen, pointing at the security guards, oh, so now you're calling security on me? For what? For wanting justice for my stolen property. This is assault. Security guard, ma'am, no one has touched you or assaulted you. We're simply asking you to move away from the ride area so operations can continue. Karen, I know my rights. I'm being discriminated against because I wear a wig. The security guards exchanged glances. They'd clearly seen it all too. Security guard, ma'am, you have two options. You can leave this area voluntarily and discuss this matter at guest relations, or we can escort you out of the park entirely. Karen, gasping dramatically, are you threatening me? Security guard, no, ma'am. I'm informing you of the park's policy on disrupting ride operations. The standoff continued for another 10 minutes. Karen demanded to see the real manager, not just a minimum wage supervisor. She insisted that the ride's cameras must have footage of exactly where her wig flew off, and that we should review it immediately. At the 45-minute mark, with the line now extending well beyond its usual boundaries and multiple complaints from other guests, the park's general manager arrived. I expected more diplomacy, but it seemed the general manager had been briefed and was out of patience. General manager, ma'am, I understand you've been offered several reasonable accommodations and have refused them all. You're disrupting our operations and the enjoyment of other guests. I'm offering you a $100 park gift card as a goodwill gesture, but you need to leave this area immediately. Karen, smugly, that doesn't even come close to covering my wig. General manager, that's our final offer. Security will now escort you to the exit. Karen, you can't do that. I paid to be here. General manager, actually, we reserve the right to remove disruptive guests. It's in the terms you agreed to when you purchased your ticket. I'd never seen someone's face turn so many shades of red so quickly. Karen, now yelling, I will sue this entire park. I will own this roller coaster. The security guards moved in, not touching her, but making it clear she needed to walk with them. Her daughter, who had been pretending to be interested in the gift shop nearby, reluctantly rejoined her mother. Daughter, Mom, please, let's just go. This is so embarrassing. Karen, to her daughter, take pictures of everything. We'll need evidence for the lawsuit. As they escorted her out, the crowd actually cheered, which only made Karen yell louder about lawsuits and injustice. The ride resumed operations, and I thought that was the end of the story. I was wrong. 3 days later, a video appeared on multiple social media platforms titled, Karen loses wig on roller coaster, then loses her mind. Someone had compiled footage from several sources, a rider's phone that captured the exact moment the wig flew off during the second loop, sailing majestically like a blonde flag before disappearing into the trees below, security camera footage of her meltdown, and several bystander videos of her being escorted out. The video went viral. By the end of the week, it had millions of views and had been featured on several comedy shows. People began coming to the park specifically to ride the Screamer and asking if it was the wig coaster. The marketing team, never ones to miss an opportunity, even created a special promotion, Hold On to Your Hats and Wigs Weekend, offering a discount to anyone who showed the viral video at the ticket booth. As for the wig, a maintenance worker found it 2 days after the incident, tangled in a tree about halfway through the ride's course. It was surprisingly intact, albeit with a few leaves and twigs embedded in it. Per park policy, it went into our lost and found. Karen never came back to claim it, but her lawyer did send a cease and desist letter about the promotional weekend, which the park's legal team promptly ignored. The best part: the daughter returned to the park about a month later with her friends. She rode the Screamer 3 times, laughing through every loop. She stopped by my station before leaving. "Daughter, I'm really sorry about my mom. She's always like that." "Me? No worries. I hope she wasn't too hard on you afterward." Daughter, with a mischievous smile actually, she got banned from our community Facebook group for trying to organize a boycott of this place. Nobody cared. We all loved the Screamer. As a small act of rebellion, she bought a park-branded baseball cap and wore it for the rest of her visit. The wig remained in lost and found for the required 60 days, then was officially considered abandoned. Last I heard, it became part of the staff's Halloween costume collection. And I added a very specific line to my safety spiel. Please secure all loose items, including hats, glasses, phones, and yes, even wigs. Story 2. I never expected a simple trip to the grocery store would end up with me in court. But that's exactly what happened last month. I've had my service dog for 3 years now. He's a beautiful, well-trained German Shepherd who helps me manage my seizure disorder. Before I got him, I rarely went out alone. The fear of having a seizure in public with no one to help was paralyzing. But with him by my side, I gained back my independence. He's trained to detect the subtle changes in my body chemistry before a seizure hits, giving me enough warning to get somewhere safe or take my emergency medication. He's also trained to help during and after a seizure, keeping me on my side, preventing me from hitting my head, and even fetching my phone if needed. He wears a clearly marked service dog vest whenever we're out, and I carry his certification papers in my wallet, though I shouldn't have to show them to anyone. In the 3 years we've been together, we've faced our share of challenges. There's always someone who thinks no pets allowed applies to service animals. It doesn't. Or someone who tries to pet him while he's working despite the "do not pet" patches on his vest. But what happened at Westfield Market went beyond the usual ignorance about service animals. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was doing my weekly grocery shopping. The store wasn't particularly crowded, and my service dog was doing exactly what he was supposed to do, staying close to me, alert but calm, not interacting with other shoppers or merchandise. We were in the produce section when I first noticed her. A woman in her 30s was pushing a shopping cart with a baby seat attached to it. The baby looked to be about 6 months old, wearing a frilly pink outfit with a matching headband. The woman kept glancing in our direction with a frown on her face. I didn't think much of it at first. Some people are just naturally wary around larger dogs, even well-behaved ones. I continued shopping, moving to the dairy section. As I was checking expiration dates on yogurt, I realized the woman had followed us and was now standing at the end of the aisle, staring. I offered a polite smile and went back to my shopping, but she started walking toward me with purpose. "Woman, excuse me, but your dog keeps looking at my baby." I was a bit taken aback. My service dog was sitting calmly beside me, not paying any particular attention to her or her baby. Me. "I'm sorry, but he's not looking at your baby. He's trained to focus on me and my needs." "Woman, I saw him. He's been staring at my baby since the produce section. I don't feel safe." "Me? He's a service animal. He's extensively trained and completely safe in public." "Woman, I don't care what you call him. He's still a dog, and dogs are unpredictable. You shouldn't have him in a grocery store anyway. There are food safety laws. I'd had this conversation many times before, so I tried to stay patient. Actually, the Americans with Disabilities Act guarantees that service animals can accompany their handlers in all areas where the public is normally allowed to go. That includes grocery stores. Woman: well, he's making me uncomfortable. I want you to take him outside. I'm sorry you feel uncomfortable, but he's not doing anything wrong. He needs to stay with me. Her face was getting redder by the second. Woman: you don't understand. My baby is allergic to dogs. This was clearly an invented concern since her baby had shown no signs of distress, and we hadn't even been close to them. We'll make sure to keep our distance then. I started to turn my cart around to move to a different aisle when she stepped closer, invading my personal space. Woman: no, you need to leave now. I was shopping here first. Ma'am, please step back. My dog is trained not to react aggressively, but you're making this situation uncomfortable for everyone. Woman: don't tell me what to do. That dog is glaring at my baby. I can see it in his eyes. He wants to attack. By this point, a small crowd of curious shoppers had started to gather. An employee from the deli counter approached cautiously. Employee: is everything okay over here? Before I could respond, the woman turned to the employee. Woman: no, everything is not okay. This person brought a dangerous animal into the store, and it's threatening my baby. The employee looked at my clearly marked service dog, who was still sitting calmly despite the woman's increasing volume. Employee: ma'am, that's a service dog. They're allowed in the store. Woman: I don't care. I want to speak to a manager right now, and someone needs to call animal control. The employee spoke into their radio, and a few minutes later, the store manager arrived. Manager: what seems to be the problem? Woman: this dog is aggressive and threatening my child. I demand it be removed from the store immediately. The manager turned to me with an apologetic look. Manager: is this a service animal? Yes, he's my medical alert dog. He's trained to help with my seizure disorder. Manager: then you and your service animal are welcome in our store. The woman looked like she might explode. Woman: fine, if you won't do anything, I'll take care of this myself. What happened next was so shocking and fast that I barely had time to react. She actually pulled back her foot and tried to kick my service dog. Thankfully, he moved back, and her kick missed. But in the process of trying to kick him, she lost her balance and fell forward, landing hard on the linoleum floor. There was a moment of stunned silence in the aisle. Then she started screaming. Woman: the dog attacked me. Did you all see that? The dog made me fall. I'm injured. Several shoppers who had witnessed the whole thing immediately spoke up. Shopper: that's not what happened. You tried to kick the dog. Another shopper: yeah, we all saw you. The dog didn't do anything. The woman scrambled to her feet, her face now a deep shade of crimson. She grabbed her shopping cart and pulled out her phone. Woman: I'm calling animal control and the police. That dog is dangerous. Manager: ma'am, multiple people just witnessed you try to kick a service animal, which is actually illegal. If anyone should be calling the police, it's not you. Woman: you're all against me. Fine. She pushed her cart away, furiously dialing on her phone. The manager turned to me. Manager: I'm so sorry about that. Are you and your service dog okay? We're fine, thank you. But I should probably report this incident. Attempting to harm a service animal is a crime. And that's exactly what I did. I filed a police report right there in the store. Several witnesses provided statements, and the store's security cameras had captured the entire incident. To my surprise, animal control actually did show up about 20 minutes later. The woman had apparently told them that an aggressive dog had attacked her and her baby in the grocery store, When they saw my calm, properly vested service dog and heard multiple accounts of what actually happened, they quickly realized they'd been misled. The woman had left the store by then, but the police had her information from the report I filed. 2 days later, she was issued a citation for attempted interference with a service animal, which carries a fine of up to $1,000 in our state. I thought that would be the end of it, but about a week later, I received notice that she was contesting the citation and we would have to appear in court. I was nervous about the court date, but my anxiety specialist assured me that my service dog could accompany me to the courthouse. When the day arrived, I was prepared with documentation of my dog's training, his certification, and my medical necessity. The woman showed up with what I assume was her husband and the baby. She had a neck brace on that hadn't been there during our grocery store encounter. The judge listened to both sides. The woman claimed my dog had given her baby a threatening look and then tripped her when she tried to protect her child. Fortunately, the grocery store had provided the security footage, which clearly showed her attempting to kick my dog and then falling as a result of her own actions. The testimonies from other shoppers and store employees further confirmed my version of events. The judge was not impressed with the woman's fabricated story or her sudden neck injury. Judge: Ma'am, the video evidence clearly contradicts your testimony. Service animals are protected under federal law, and attempting to interfere with or harm a service animal is a serious offense. The citation stands, and I'm imposing the maximum fine of $1,000. The woman started to protest, but the judge cut her off. Judge: Additionally, you've wasted this court's time with false allegations and what appears to be an attempt at insurance fraud with that neck brace you're wearing. I'm ordering you to pay court costs as well. As we left the courtroom, the woman's husband looked absolutely mortified. He muttered an apology as they passed us in the hallway. Since that day, I've become more active in educating people about service animals and the laws that protect them. I've even done a few presentations at local schools and community centers. Most people are just uninformed, not malicious. But that incident reminded me that some people's entitlement knows no bounds, not even when it comes to interfering with a medical necessity for someone with a disability. My service dog and I still shop at that grocery store. The employees always greet us warmly, and a few have told me that the woman has never returned. I like to think she learned something from the experience, but somehow I doubt it. People that entitled rarely change, they just find new places to make demands and new people to blame for their problems. At least my service dog got some extra treats that day. He handled the situation better than most humans would have. Story 3. I don't like drawing attention to my disability. Most days, I can manage pretty well, and to the casual observer, I probably look like any other 35-year-old guy. But appearances can be deceiving. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan before and wide took my right leg below the knee. Modern prosthetics are amazing. I can walk, drive, and do most things without much trouble. On good days, you wouldn't even notice my slight limp. But some days, the phantom pain flares up, my stump gets irritated, or the prosthetic just doesn't fit right because of swelling. Those are the days when I'm grateful for my handicapped parking permit. Last Tuesday was definitely one of those days. I woke up with my residual limb throbbing, and I knew it was going to be rough. I had a doctor's appointment at the Veterans Affairs Clinic, and I was already dreading the walk from the parking lot. When I arrived at the VOS, the lot was nearly full except for the handicapped spaces near the entrance. I pulled into one, hung my placard from my rearview mirror, and carefully got out of my truck. I was wearing jeans that covered my prosthetic, grabbed my cane from the passenger seat, and started making my way toward the entrance. I was about halfway to the door when I heard the sound of tires screeching into the parking lot. A luxury SUV whipped around the corner and pulled directly into the handicapped space next to where I had parked. I paused and watched as a woman got out. She wasn't displaying a handicapped placard or license plate, and she moved with the confident stride of someone who had never experienced a day of physical limitation in her life. She was dressed in expensive workout clothes, oversized sunglasses perched on her head, and she was busy texting on her phone as she slammed her car door. I hesitated, debating whether to say something. Usually, I mind my own business, but I was having a particularly painful day, and her taking that spot meant someone else who needed it would have to park farther away. Excuse me, ma'am, are you aware that's a handicapped parking space? She barely glanced up from her phone. Woman, I'll just be a minute. I'm running late for my appointment. I understand, but those spaces are reserved for people with disabilities. Do you have a placard? She finally looked up, scanning me from head to toe with a dismissive expression. Woman, why do you care? Are you the parking police? No, but I am disabled, and I know how important these spaces are for people who need them. She scoffed and looked me up and down again. Woman, you don't look disabled to me. What's your disability? Attitude? The comment stung more than it should have. It wasn't the first time I'd heard something like that, but it never gets easier. Not all disabilities are visible, ma'am. Woman, right? Well, I'm late for my appointment, and I'm not moving my car. Deal with it. She started walking toward the entrance. I don't know what came over me, maybe it was the pain, maybe it was years of hearing similar comments, but I decided not to let it go. I lost my leg serving this country. That's my disability. She turned around, her face twisted in disbelief. Woman, oh, please, you're walking just fine. If you were really missing a leg, you'd be in a wheelchair. I rolled up my pant leg just enough to reveal the metal and plastic that replaced my flesh and bone. Her eyes widened for a moment, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. Woman, well, you're obviously managing fine. I don't see why you need special parking. There are people with real problems who need those spaces. By this point, a small crowd had gathered. An older veteran in a wheelchair had stopped to watch, and a couple of staff members from the clinic had come outside after hearing the commotion. The space isn't just about distance. It's wider to accommodate mobility equipment, closer for those who can't walk far, and... Woman, look, I don't have time for a lecture. I have a Pilates class in 30 minutes, and I need to pick up my husband's prescription first. You can walk just fine with your fancy leg, so stop making a scene. She turned to go, but then stopped and faced me again. Woman, and for your information, I have stress-induced migraines. That's a real disability, not something I use for attention and special treatment. One of the clinic staff members stepped forward. I recognized her as one of the receptionists. Receptionist, ma'am, if you have a disability that qualifies for a handicapped placard, you should apply for one. But without one, you can't park in that space. Woman, I don't need a placard. I'm just running in for 2 minutes to pick up a prescription. Receptionist, I'm sorry, but that doesn't matter. Those are the rules. There's plenty of regular parking on the other side of the lot. Woman, this is ridiculous. I'm a taxpayer. My husband is a respected businessman in this community. As she was mid-rant, a white parking enforcement vehicle pulled into the lot. The officer inside seemed to notice the situation immediately and pulled up behind the woman's SUV. The enforcement officer, a middle-aged man with a clipboard, got out and approached us. Parking officer, is there a problem here? Woman, yes, there is. This man is harassing me because I parked here for just 2 minutes to pick up a prescription. The parking officer looked at her car, then at the clearly marked handicap space, then back at her. Parking officer, do you have a handicapped placard or license plate, ma'am? Woman, no, but I'm only going to be a minute. This is absurd. He's walking just fine. She pointed at me accusingly. The parking officer turned to me, noticing my cane. Parking officer, sir, is that your truck in the other space? I nodded. Yes, my placard is hanging from the mirror. He nodded, then turned back to the woman. Parking officer, ma'am, it doesn't matter if you're parking for 1 minute or 1 hour. These spaces are legally reserved for people with permits. I'm going to have to write you a ticket. Woman, a ticket? For being efficient with my time. This is harassment. As the officer began writing the ticket, she became increasingly agitated. "Woman, I want to speak to your supervisor. This man is clearly able to walk. He's a fraud." The parking officer paused and looked up. Parking officer: "Ma'am, challenging someone's disability is inappropriate and none of your business. The fine for parking in a handicapped space without authorization is $250. And since you're being difficult, I'm also calling for a tow." "Woman, a tow? You can't do that. I told you I'll only be a minute." Parking officer: "Actually, I can. City ordinance allows immediate towing of vehicles illegally parked in handicapped spaces." He reached for his radio and called for a tow truck. The woman was turning red with anger. "Woman, do you know who my husband is? He plays golf with the mayor." Parking officer: "You can explain that to the towing company, ma'am. Their number is on the ticket." By now, more people had gathered, including several veterans who had appointments at the clinic. The woman noticed the growing crowd and the disapproving looks she was receiving. For a moment, I thought she might finally realize how inappropriate her behavior was. Instead, she pointed at me again. "Woman, this is all your fault. You could have just minded your own business. What gives you the right to police where I park?" An older veteran in a wheelchair spoke up. "Older veteran, he earned that right on the battlefield, ma'am." The woman looked around at the crowd, seemingly realizing for the first time that she was surrounded by veterans and clinic staff who were not on her side. Before she could say anything else, a tow truck pulled into the lot. It was remarkably fast. Later, I found out they prioritize calls for handicapped space violations at the VA clinic. "Woman, this is insane. I'm not letting you tow my car." She rushed to her SUV and jumped inside. But the parking officer had already placed a boot on her tire when she wasn't looking. When she tried to start the engine and drive away, she realized she was stuck. "Woman, what is this? Remove it immediately." Parking officer: "I can't do that, ma'am. Please step out of the vehicle so the tow operator can do his job." After a few more minutes of protesting, she finally got out of her car, still fuming. The tow operator hooked up her SUV efficiently, clearly having done this many times before. "Woman, where are you taking it? How am I supposed to get to my Pilates class now?" Parking officer: "The information is on your citation, ma'am. There's a bus stop right across the street." As the tow truck pulled away with her SUV, she stood in the parking lot, citation in hand, looking both furious and bewildered. The receptionist approached her. "Receptionist, would you still like to pick up that prescription, ma'am?" The woman looked at her, then at me, then at the crowd that had witnessed the entire scene. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the main road, presumably to find another way to get to her Pilates class. The parking officer turned to me. "Parking officer, sorry about that, sir. We get calls like this at the VA clinic more often than you'd think." "Me, I appreciate you handling it." He nodded and headed back to his vehicle. As the crowd dispersed, the older veteran in the wheelchair rolled up next to me. "Older veteran, what unit?" "Me, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines." "Older veteran?" "Vietnam." "Myself, 1st Cavalry Division." We chatted briefly before heading into the clinic for our respective appointments. As I walked through the doors, I noticed a flyer on the bulletin board about applying for handicapped parking permits. I hoped that maybe, just maybe, the woman would look into getting one properly if she truly had a qualifying condition. A week later, I was back at the VA for a follow-up appointment. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed a new sign had been installed. "Unauthorized vehicles in handicapped spaces will be towed immediately at owner's expense." I couldn't help but smile, wondering if it was a direct result of last week's incident. I never saw that woman again, but I did hear from one of the receptionists that she had to pay over $400 to get her SUV back from the impound lot. Maybe an expensive lesson, but hopefully a learned one. Story 4. I've never been particularly excited about jury duty. Who is? But I understand it's my civic responsibility. So when I received my 3rd summons in 5 years, seriously, what are the odds? I dutifully took the day off work, packed a book and some snacks, and prepared for a long day of waiting around. The county courthouse in our mid-sized city is an imposing building, all marble columns and echoing hallways. I arrived at 8:30 am as instructed, went through security, and found my way to Jury Assembly Room B, where about 60 other reluctant citizens were already gathered. Most were quietly scrolling on their phones or reading. A few were attempting to work on laptops despite the spotty Wi-Fi. I found an empty seat near the back, pulled out my novel, and settled in for what I assumed would be hours of tedious waiting. The clerk had just begun explaining the jury selection process when the door swung open with unnecessary force. A woman in her 50s marched in wearing a designer suit that screamed, "I shop exclusively at high-end department stores." Her perfectly highlighted hair was styled in an immaculate bob, and she carried what looked like a genuine Louis Vuitton handbag. She surveyed the room with obvious disdain, her nose practically turned up at a 90-degree angle. The clerk paused her explanation. "Clerk, ma'am, please find a seat quickly. We're in the middle of orientation." The woman didn't move, instead inspecting the room as if looking for a VIP section. "Woman, is this really where jurors wait? There must be a separate room for professionals. I have an executive-level position and can't possibly sit here all day with everyone." The clerk's expression suggested this wasn't her first rodeo with entitled jurors. "Clerk, ma'am, this is the jury assembly room for everyone summoned today. Please take a seat so we can continue." The woman huffed loudly and reluctantly moved toward the only remaining seats at the front of the room. She made a show of wiping down the plastic chair with a disinfectant wipe before perching on its edge like it might contaminate her designer suit. The clerk continued with her explanation about the selection process, how many trials needed jurors that day, and how long we might be waiting. I returned to my book, only half listening since this was my third time hearing the same speech. About 20 minutes into the orientation, the woman raised her hand, interrupting the clerk mid-sentence. "Clerk, yes, do you have a question?" "Woman, this isn't a question. This is a statement. I need to speak to the judge immediately. I'm not going to waste my entire day here when I have an important company to run. I should be excused or at least fast-tracked." The room fell silent. Even the people who had been dozing off were now wide awake and watching the drama unfold. "Clerk, ma'am, there are 6 different judges with trials today. You haven't been assigned to a courtroom yet. There's no judge to speak to at this stage." "Woman, well, find me whoever's in charge. This is ridiculous. Don't you know who I am?" The clerk maintained impressive composure. "Clerk, ma'am, the process is the same for everyone regardless of who they are. If you have a legitimate hardship reason for being excused, you can fill out this form, but—" "Woman, I shouldn't need to fill out a form. My time is worth thousands of dollars an hour to my company. That's my hardship." The clerk took a deep breath. "Clerk, as I was explaining to everyone, financial hardship only applies in specific circumstances and—" "Woman, I demand to speak to the judge right now. I won't sit here with the common people wasting my valuable time. Either put me on the jury immediately or excuse me." By this point, everyone in the room was staring. Some people looked annoyed, others amused. The man next to me whispered, "Bet she's fun at restaurants." "Clerk, ma'am, please lower your voice. You're disrupting the orientation. If you continue, I'll need to call court security." "Woman, call them. Call security. Call the judge. Call the governor. I don't care. Do you know how many important meetings I'm missing right now? I should be running this jury, not sitting on it. Actually, that's perfect. Make me the foreperson or whatever it's called, and I'll make sure this trial doesn't drag on unnecessarily." The clerk picked up her phone and spoke quietly into it. Meanwhile, the woman continued her tirade. "Woman, this is exactly what's wrong with our justice system. No respect for successful people's time. I pay more taxes than probably everyone in this room combined, which means I basically pay all your salaries." A young man a few seats away from her couldn't contain himself. "Young man, lady, We all have jobs and places to be. You're not special. Woman, excuse me. I most certainly am special. I'm the regional director of a multi-million-dollar company. What do? Bag groceries. The young man looked unfazed. Young man, I'm a pediatric oncologist, and even I managed to clear my schedule without throwing a tantrum. The woman's mouth opened and closed a few times, but before she could respond, 2 court officers appeared at the door. Clerk, officers, this juror is being disruptive and refusing to follow procedure. She's demanding to speak directly to a judge. One of the officers stepped forward. Officer, ma'am, you need to calm down and follow the clerk's instructions, or we'll have to escort you out. Woman, perfect, escort me out. That's what I've been asking for. Officer, if we escort you out, it would be for contempt, not excusal from jury duty. There could be fines involved. This finally seemed to penetrate her bubble of entitlement. Her expression shifted from righteous indignation to calculation. Woman, fines? How much are we talking about? Officer, for disrupting court proceedings, it could be up to $1,000 at the judge's discretion. The woman's face reddened. Woman, that's absurd. All I did was ask to speak to someone in charge. Officer, you were disruptive and disrespectful to court staff and the jury selection process. Now, you have 2 options. Sit down quietly and continue with jury selection, or continue this behavior and be brought before a judge for contempt. For a moment, I thought she might actually back down, but then she squared her shoulders and raised her chin. Woman, fine. Take me to the judge. At least then I'll be talking to someone with actual authority instead of wasting time in this room full of nobodies. A collective gasp went through the room. Even the officers looked surprised at her doubling down. The lead officer nodded to his partner. Officer, all right? Please come with us. Woman, gladly, and I'll be filing a complaint about how I've been treated here today. As the officers escorted her out, she turned to address the room like she was making a grand exit speech. Woman, this is a perfect example of government inefficiency. When I speak to the judge, I'll be suggesting a complete overhaul of this ridiculous system. After the door closed behind them, the room remained silent for a beat before breaking into hushed conversations. The clerk called for attention and tried to get the orientation back on track, but everyone was too distracted by what we'd just witnessed. Later that afternoon, as we were being assigned to different courtrooms, I overheard the clerk telling another staff member what had happened to our disruptive juror. Apparently, she had been brought before the presiding judge of the courthouse, who was not impressed by her demands or attitude. Not only was she held in contempt and fined the maximum $1,000, but she was also ordered to return for jury service the following month with the added stipulation that she would serve the full term regardless of whether she was selected for a trial. The clerk who had dealt with her so professionally earlier caught me eavesdropping and winked. Clerk, some people learn about civic duty the hard way. 3 of us who had witnessed the morning drama were eventually selected for a 2-day trial. During a break in proceedings, our jury group naturally discussed the woman from that morning. As it turned out, one juror's sister worked at the courthouse and had more details to share. According to courthouse gossip, the woman had tried to name-drop her way out of the fine, claiming friendship with various local politicians and threatening to call the mayor. This had only made the judge more irritated. When she finally realized she couldn't intimidate her way out of the situation, she had broken down in tears, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. The judge, unmoved, had reportedly told her, "The courtroom is perhaps the last place where your wealth and connections mean absolutely nothing. Here, you're simply a citizen with a duty to perform, just like everyone else. Perhaps next month's service will help you appreciate that fact." I finished my jury duty feeling surprisingly satisfied. The case itself was fairly mundane, a dispute between a contractor and homeowner, but knowing that at least one entitled person had learned that there are still places where money can't buy special treatment made the whole experience more worthwhile. When I received my next jury summons 2 years later, I actually found myself looking forward to it a little. After all, you never know what kind of entertainment might walk through the door, demanding to speak to the judge.